What's happening, fam? L.A.R. movement still moving. Book is entitled Lessons from a Non-Custodial Father at Amazon, Kindle, and Create Space. Link will be in the description box below as usual. Go get it. PayPal link there also. They asked me to put it up, so I'll put it up. Thanks everybody for supporting. This video is entitled SAT Adversity Scoring. So the SAT wants to implement or is implementing a extra score to give to colleges that lets colleges know how much adversity the person who took their test had to deal with, to maybe in some ways bump them up, or in my opinion it can hold them back too. Depends. Some people think it's a good thing, some people don't. I'm like in the middle, just looking at both sides right now. It's something that's been proposed before and in some ways used in a different way. But so they want, if you come from a poor neighborhood or a rougher neighborhood, single parent household, military family where you moved around a lot, that gets added to your SAT score. Now, only the colleges know the score you're going to get. You actually, as the student and the student's family, don't know what the score you get is, which I don't understand that part, because basically, you give the school discretion without even knowing how much discretion they might be using. So I think that'll create its own problem. But to have to do this in the first place, it proves what people have been saying. The education in poor neighborhoods is not up to par with the education in wealthier neighborhoods. Period. Right? They had other factors like size of the senior class, which I think they can mess with, because even rich schools could have a small senior class. They could be private schools or not. So, people are always going to find loopholes. Or if people was on a lunch program, this, that, and the third, right? So me personally, I think about it like, for some people this would be a good thing, and some people it would be a bad thing. And they were talking about it as in direct correlation with this admission scandal, where people we're paying people to actually take the SAT for their kids also, but paying for them to get into colleges. And these are the other side of that to me is also they're looking for talent outside of the wealthy areas, because, if some of y'all don't realize this, but there are a lot of kids who come up in good neighborhoods and go to good schools that are incompetent. But the prestige of the school or the grades they get in the school, however they get those grades, make them look better than they are. So as part of the issue is also systematic in America, because as the economy is such because of, in a sense, nepotism, classism, a hookup. Somebody giving somebody else a hookup because they know them, and making people rich sometimes wealthy, or sometimes giving them great jobs even though they're unqualified compared to people who may have came from a different circumstance. And that hasn't necessarily worked out in this economy, in this country's downward spiral shows that. So I get it on that end. On the other end, it can get people into college or into better colleges that they didn't once get in, but it can also get you bumped into a college that you can't afford, and you're going to wind up in debt the rest of your life. That's also part of that program, because you can use it. I was from this neighborhood, and I went to this school, and things were like this, so, and I still excelled at it. But if I was in a better environment, I'd probably do better. So wow, instead of having you go to a regular school, we're gonna bump your school up a notch, and you can get into these colleges. And now, you know, you better have a long-term plan to pay off these student loans, and you better live below your means by when you graduate, and hopefully you get employed, and hopefully you make money and have a great living. Because if you don't, you're gonna be screwed, you know, financially speaking. So I think about that also, about these scores. The other thing is about, you know, people they don't bring race into, they say they don't bring race into account, but let's be honest, you don't necessarily have to bring race into the account per se. All you have to know is the area to bring race into it. It's a way to include or exclude somebody by their race if you know where they're coming from. Because if they're from a rural part that's predominantly white, you're probably going to know their race. If they're from a neighborhood, or they go to a certain school in a particular city, you're going to know if they're black or Hispanic or Asian, because of the population in the school itself. So you don't necessarily need race in this to discriminate. One of the nuances of it that I think people don't necessarily take into consideration, because they was like, you know, they sued Harvard for not having enough diversity because Asians wasn't getting in, who felt like they earned it, which probably be is true or not true. I don't know, because the same thing happened with the girl in Texas, and she didn't qualify. So could be true, it could not be true. But Yale had that thing where, you know, Yale did it where they had made more diversity on the campus because of implementing these such things, type of standards, and they saw their admissions from different groups and populations and economic backgrounds, I think, double. But once again, like I said, maybe they can't afford to go to Yale. You know, you got to think about this. When Obama was in office, y'all got to remember, when he was on the campaign trail, him having a bestseller book is actually what paid off his student loans. So he was in his late 40s, early 50s before he actually finished paying off his student loans. You got to think about that. Even as a senator, you know, he needed that type of help. Even with that grade of education, to be a brilliant mind, this, that, and the third, he was still under the thumb of those student loans. Now, part of this, to me, is also an indictment on the failures of this country, and maybe people going away from college because few people are getting, because people actually, the skilled trade needs is probably a better way to go right now instead of college. And I think even colleges know we're going to lose a bunch of students because these people are coming to get education, but they don't have the skills for a job. And we've talked about automation in the manosphere, in the black manosphere, in the Negro manosphere ad nauseum, and having a skill is just as important as having a degree. So it's going to be an issue. Now, doubling back a little bit, there are going to be people who get precedence over other people. You know, if you're a military kid, I think you're probably going to get precedence over somebody who just came from a bad neighborhood or who came from a single mother household. That's just my opinion, because they're a military kid. Their circumstances different from, and I think their circumstances may even be more extreme than some, because they constantly moving. Some military kids constantly moving, so they're always adjusting. So that goes with their intellect, their learning curve also. But being in a a poor neighborhood, if you're in a poor neighborhood with a good school, not nobody, it's a wash. If you're in a poor neighborhood with a bad school, okay. You're in a rough neighborhood with a good school, it's a wash. Rough neighborhood with a bad school, I get it. Just being in a single mother household, it's got to be in there because there's so many single mother households in society now. So that's predominant, but it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult because that's becoming a norm. So I guess that has to be part of the mix. But I still think in one aspect, there's still going to be discrimination. Is just because since you don't know your score, you won't know if you're discriminated against. You know what I'm saying? So, or you don't know if somebody's if a group is getting preferential treatment compared to you because this information goes to the school and not the students, and you won't be able to test that theory until they start maybe years from now giving that information out in due time to be tested. So this is going to be an interesting process. Like, share, subscribe. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace.